He pressed his manhood into me.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Get that manhood away.
Yeah, literally.
The heat radiates. The heat's always radiating.
The heat is always radiating.
Oh my God. It's an oven in there.
Hi, Jennette. Welcome to One Nightstand.
Hi,
Thrilled
Szalay.
to have you here.
Happy to be here.
You've chosen 5 brilliant books for us to talk about, and we also have your incredible debut novel, Half His Age. Have you always been a big reader?
Yes. I read a lot as a kid. I read children's books way past the age when you're supposed to read children's books. I loved Dr. Seuss. I loved Roald Dahl. He was my absolute favorite.
The best.
Pretty dark.
Really dark.
Very dark.
Which was your favorite?
So there's this one called Henry Sugar and Six More, which is just like a collection of short stories. But I got that from the library and I never returned it.
Oh
I'm so sorry, Garden Grove Public Library.
Secret stash.
I would just stroke the cover. It was just like beautiful, sort of had this like grainy texture, and the pages were like yellow, like it had been checked out so many times. The pages were yellowed, and literally touching the book was as much of an experience as reading it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I used to love reading Roald Dahl as well. There was something you could just like, it was so gripping. I'd read one in an evening.
Yes. Well, there's no author for children nowadays who I think captures that darkness.
No.
And it's so missing. It's really, that's what worked. It's the juxtaposition, the happy, the sad. That's what I loved about it. And I wish there was a modern day Roald Dahl.
Maybe that's your next book series.
Maybe. There you go.
Well, we're here to talk today about some of your favorite books, but also your debut novel, which is brilliant. But I thought we could start with Everything, Nothing, Someone by Alice Carrière. Tell me about your love of that book.
Yes. So Alice has actually become a close friend of mine. We appreciated each other's memoirs, but I've let's see, between reading and listening, it's been 4 full times experiencing the joy of that book and the tragedy of that book. She really unpacks trauma in a way that is beautiful and visceral and uncomfortable. Some of my favorite things. But she also writes about privilege. She grew up extremely privileged, and I typically struggle to get on board with that kind of a point of view. I don't know what it is. I guess just that it's privilege, and it can feel stuffy, and it can feel like people complaining about problems that aren't real. And And if there's a comedic lens, then that's one thing. But if it's not, then it just is it feels like self-important. Yeah. But she writes about privilege on the surface when really the underbelly and what's happening underneath is so dark and so twisted and so messed up. It's complete neglect. Privilege, can look a lot of different ways, and just because you're financially privileged doesn't mean you have privilege in literally any other area of life. She did such an exquisite job. I love that book.
It's sort of shockingly vulnerable at points in a way that you are sort of like really takes your breath away.
100%. I think that's something that's so key. Well, certainly, an aspect of anything that I love to read is where there's a truth that's said that arrests you, that just stops you in your tracks, because it seems so scary to say that thing out loud, let alone to write it down. And I think she has many of those moments in the course of her book.
I loved this section as well where I was reading it in a coffee shop, and I had to put it down and start scribbling away in my notes. I think she captures so well how much when you're going through periods of mental turmoil, how gratifying it feels to get a diagnosis. I've never read anyone really capture that, the fact that she talks about she talks about, I held them aloft and visible like a sign at an airport, using them to identify myself even to strangers. And I related to that so much. When I had an eating disorder at university, there was this washing over of relief in a way when someone gave you a label, even though you then realize it has its limits. But I thought it was so beautifully done.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very divisive area, is whether or not to label.
Yes.
And whether or not it can be helpful. And I do think it's so up to the person what feels right to them. Does a label feel helpful? Does it not? But I so agree. I thought that was really interesting, and it seemed there was such relief in her in getting that, and freedom in a way.
Totally. And I feel like now it's the kind of thing where it felt like relief at the time, but maybe in some ways it wasn't. She talks about all of the drugs that she was prescribed in this complete concoction.
Oh my God, I couldn't believe the cocktail. It kept going and going and going.
And then the worst part was when something wasn't working, they just added another one on.
Yes.
They never took anything away.
Yeah.
breathtaking. Yeah, really shocking. Well, at the end of the book, she forgives her father, right? In the sense that I feel like she is sort of able to process his behavior in particular. Obviously, her mum, the artist Jennifer Bartlett, dies. How did you read that sort of like act of forgiveness?
Unrelatable.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Don't get it. Never will.
Right? I felt the same, honestly.
Did you really?
Yeah, I felt a little bit just like, God, that's bloody generous.
Yeah. And just knowing her now and knowing how kind she is, there's a part of me, just being her friend, there's a part of me that was just like, don't forgive him. Don't. No, he doesn't deserve it. But I really do. I genuinely think forgiveness is really complicated. And I think so often we're sort of told to forgive. What is that, what is the thing where it's like taking poison that you expect them to die from. What is that annoying quote?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I think forgiveness is such a tricky area because it can feel like, for me, it certainly can feel like like I'm being forced to do this thing that I don't feel. And I think it can be, if there's oftentimes I feel like there's a lot of anger tied in with not forgiving. But just because you forgive doesn't mean that the anger completely dissolves and you've moved on from it. And I feel like it's so much more helpful for me to be able to just own the emotional state instead of posturing, pretending it's something other than it is, suppressing. I feel like so oftentimes forgiveness is actually just somebody suppressing the truth.
I agree.
But if you can get there, like Alice, then that's admirable.
Yeah. I actually love that line in your novel. The peace and freedom that can only come from lowering your expectations of someone, when Waldo's talking about her mother. And I related to that so much because I think rather than forgiveness and I relate so much more to that idea of
accepting that they're a loser.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
There is freedom in that, in just recognizing, I had this expectation for this person. That is never going to be met. It is impossible.
Yeah.
It is impossible. And letting go of that clinging, I think, can be really a liberating experience. It certainly is for Waldo in that instance that you're talking about.
Yeah.
She really, she really learns a lot over the course of the book.
She really does. One thing that, we spoke briefly about sort of Alice's bravery, and I think I read your memoir and the novel, and you're an incredibly brave writer. Did you ever feel like you had to work up to that bravery, or is it something that
not for writing? I'm much braver as a writer than I am as a person, like interfacing with anyone ever. I think that's partially why I write. It's the place where I feel like that's the thing that contain all of me. So many of the things that I'm thinking I can't say. Like, do you know the amount of times that I've been on a Zoom and I just want to be like, this should have been a fucking email.
Yeah.
Why are we all sitting here? This is a waste of everybody's time. I don't like half of you. Like, the things that I want to say, I can't say.
Yeah.
It's just not socially acceptable to say 95% of my thoughts.
No, you can't. Yeah.
But in writing, somehow it's like, oh my God, the bravery, the honesty. Yet if I literally said the same exact thing in a Zoom, they'd be like, unprofessional. Like,
that's
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That is interesting, isn't it? I talk a lot about that with all the talk at the moment around like autism and ADHD. I have a friend who's found a lot of like relief in that, and we talk a lot about masking. And she's like, "You mask all the time." I'm like, "Yeah, because I just have to. Like, how do you think I get through the day? I can't like say what comes into my brain every minute."
I mean, everyone's masking all the time. You see the panic in everybody's eyes, don't you?
Yeah.
Come on. We're all just...
Do you ever, in those scenarios, like, do you have certain people who you like unmask with, or who you don't put that filter on that you talk about in the Zoom meeting?
My significant other. Yeah. Thank God. Thank the Lord Jesus. We've been together 9 years, and we were friends for 2 years before that, and that's the person that I'm able to just completely be myself around. Yeah. Good, bad, and ugly, all the shades, no mask. And then a few friends, but nobody's coming to mind right now.
No, it's hard. It's really, really hard. Like,
yeah.
And I think also, especially if you want to be a good friend, and I found the friendship between in your book between Waldo and Franny really. I thought you captured that sort of like the kind of often like exploitative and like performative element of like teenage friendships sometimes, where for like Franny it really is about sort of like how it makes her feel about herself, not necessarily about being a good friend.
100%. People won't say this, but I do think that many friendships are rooted in both people believing on some level they're better than the other person. Yeah. And that person makes them feel better about themselves because they can kind of look down on them. Nobody's going to say it. But I do feel that way, and specifically in this adolescent, friendship between Waldo and Franny. This is somebody that Waldo really feels she's outgrown.
Yeah.
And Franny probably feels that she's outgrown Waldo as well. We're never in Franny's point of view. That's neither here nor there. But for Waldo, I think that's such a tricky thing when you're at an age where you are starting to, form opinions. You are starting to develop your preferences and your taste, and you're becoming more of yourself. And it can be really jarring when becoming more of yourself means losing so much of what you know, so many of the friendships so many of your closest relationships can fall by the wayside as you become more of yourself. It's a jarring reality.
It is. It's very difficult. Do you still experience that, or do you feel like as you've got older, you've sort of found a sort of continuum now that feels kind of steady?
Writing is how I have found my group, my people, all throughout my 20s. I'm 33 now, but all throughout my 20s, I thought I would cry to my significant other just saying, like, when am I going to find my people? When am I going to find them? Why don't I have them? What is it going to take? And then in my 30s, that's where I've really found my friends, and everybody's a writer, everybody's an author. All my closest friends are authors.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I feel like I belong.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful feeling.
Truly. Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's just even, I can meet an author for the first time and sit down with them, and it's just the way that we, think, and the way that the conversation unfolds just feels so much more in line with what I'd been craving for so long and felt like it was impossible to get to. So it's very, very rewarding.
I loved the line in Alice's book where she was talking about therapy sessions that felt like English assignments, opportunities to construct perfect stories about myself and wait for praise, which I thought was just, I definitely related to. Are you a therapy person?
Yeah. I like therapy.
Yeah. And are you sort of like a regular therapy person, or you sort of like do you go through episodes?
Go through episodes for sure. But I definitely think so. A lot of people say like therapy doesn't work, and I think if you think therapy doesn't work, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah,
you're probably not. There's probably a layer, because I know that instinct to quit. I've of course had it. I've quit multiple times I'll go away from it for a while, and usually that's when there's that next layer that needs exposing the most. Yeah. It's just a little raw. But it's like, oh, it's not a good fit with my therapist. Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Although I have also had bad fits where I'm just like,
that's true too.
I don't think we're going to get there together kind of vibe.
And I feel like you know that pretty early on.
You do.
You can really tell.
Mine's about whether they've got some humor.
Okay, for sure.
Because I just like can't, I don't want to sit like wringing my hands. Like I know it's bad. I don't like, let's just like crack some jokes and try and solve it.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
I suppose we all cope in weird ways. I also thought that, Alice talks a lot about the boundaries being porous with her mother in particular, which, how did you sort of relate to elements of it in the context of your memoir, or did it feel like, because it was such a specific story?
No, I really read it, as its own.
Yeah.
I appreciate books for that reason. They can take me out of myself for a while.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to kind of be transported somewhere completely different.
Yeah, I felt like it was her as I'm reading it. It was really incredible, the work that she did.
And the section about Gregory, before I realized that Gregory was eventually going to be her husband.
Yes.
When she's talking about him.
Isn't that great? The
best plot twist ever. But that section where she was writing about him like hopping between homeless shelters and sleeping outside in New York City, I felt like I was reading a novel.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It was gripping. So gripping.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible. Do you like with your friends who are also writers or memoirists or people who do you have sort of like discussions about how you feel about writing about people who are real, or is that something that you ever discuss with other writers?
No, I talk more process. I recently got dinner with Beth Raymer, who wrote Fireworks Every Night. Yeah, and that's an incredible novel. But we were talking about process and how many drafts you go through before something's ready to go. And she does one, and I do many. Yeah. And we were talking about the differences in that and realizing how it takes about the same time. It's just a matter of, she's sitting there and, line by line. And she was describing it that she'll fixate and really kind of fine tune and refine and start back from the beginning every day as she's developing it further and further. And I could never do that. It just wouldn't work for my style, what I naturally do.
Yeah.
I'm a, plotters versus pantsers, right? I'm very much a pantser, and I have to get it out of my system for that, in that way of like the how will I know what I think till I see what I say way. I get it out of my system, then I take a highlighter and a red pen, and I try to literally figure out what it was I was trying to say. I'll highlight the passages that I think are going to be maybe a vague suggestion of something, but that the initial drafts are very much, for me, a way of finding what it is. Yeah. And then the real work begins, draft 4 on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And do you have any early readers that you really trust?
I do. I have a few people that I shared half his age with at different times. And something that was really important to me was that I knew what it was before I shared it with people. Because I think it can be really, it just will not lead to the best work, I don't think, if you share something prematurely. And if somebody's giving you notes from a place of not seeing the vision for what it wants to be, but for what they want it to be, and they might be noting something completely differently if they could see clearly what it was that you wanted it to be. And so I feel I have to know what it is in order to take those notes through my own filter and apply them appropriately to what I know. Well, it's going to be that, So maybe this one note is great, but that would be for if it was going to be this other thing.
That's exactly, yeah.
And I'll take the ones that really fit this that I think, will make it better.
Yeah. But I totally relate. I write to work out what I think.
Yes.
And then it's like that's why are you a journaler?
Yes. Yeah.
It's the best.
Not recently. I used to be so into journaling, but just in working on half his age, I was so invested, and so I didn't have as much time, but I really want to get back to it. I just visited Pixar, and I bought a Pixar journal. So I like recently cracked it open. I'm only a couple pages in, but very excited to fill it up.
Oh, that is so fun. Yeah, there's nothing like starting a new one. Although I have a bad habit, I chronicle like my worst days. So I read back. I never write when I'm feeling good.
Wait, I think about this all the time. I'll literally, if I've had a particularly like purge like journal session where, it's got a lot of difficult emotion in it, I'll think, well, okay, I have to like remember to do something when I'm in a good mood to journal and when I'm in a good mood in a couple of days, because I don't want to look back on this 25 years from now and be like, wow, things were rough. I want an accurate reflection of what life was at the time.
I should try that, because mine's just like a highlight reel of my worst days.
Really?
Which is kind of entertaining in a way. I'll look back and be like, 2022 was rough. But it's just because it's all the worst stories.
How long does it take you to fill up a journal?
It really varies depending on how bad things are. No, yeah. I mean, I'm very in and out with it. And I'm not particularly methodical about where I journal. Like sometimes I'll just journal in my notes app and then delete it like a week later if I need to, if I'm like on the go and I'm like, just need to get something out.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I don't journal in that way, but I do sometimes for idea. If I'm early on in an idea and I'm trying to see if it's one that's gonna stick or not, I have 2 email accounts, and I'll just email myself back and forth.
Oh, I love
to try to kind of like nudge myself.
Yeah. That's clever.
It's helpful. It's really helpful.
That's very interesting. I love that. Well, next, given you've brought it up, we should talk about Fireworks Every Night by Beth Raymer, which is like a fun book and has lots of rage, similar to your book as well.
Yeah, there's a theme between both Everything, Nothing, Someone, I think, and Fireworks, which is that there are these inherently really, intense subject matter, heavy subject matter, but there's a note of humor to both of them that I think is so crucial. I can't do heavy on heavy. No. If we're doing heavy subject matter and the tone is heavy, it's like it's
just awful.
It's just melodramatic and gets bogged down and
But tell me, what did you love about the story of Cece?
I love the relationship with her dad. I think that was so well painted and well done, and how we see that evolve over time. But really, I resonate with female characters who are dealt a shitty hand. This is something that I think I'll probably always try to write. A character who really deserves better than her circumstances and was just kind of born into the wrong place, wrong time, and fights really against the odds to overcome those circumstances and do whatever she can to claw her way out, and in ways that are oftentimes, if not always, messy and not linear and challenging.
Yeah, I thought the marriage with Alex and that breaking down was a really like lovely extra layer to how it feels to move beyond something, and sometimes you go so far in a completely different direction and then you're like, no, but that's not me either, even though it's the complete opposite of the world I was born in. I thought that was really interesting.
100%. It's like the pendulum swing, right, where it's probably overcompensating on either side, and then ideally you land somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
Have you read all of these just very
I read
recently?
them this weekend,
oh my God.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I read them in preparation. Yeah.
Wow.
I really enjoyed it. It evokes like Florida
so vividly.
I
feel like I'm getting the hot sticky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so like special in that way. And I think I loved one of the lines that she wrote about Lorraine, where it was like, Lorraine didn't just turn out like that, something happened to her, which I think is such a like powerful way to talk about the sort of sexual assault and everything like that, and how the sort of people end up in these complicated positions.
Yeah, I think about that so often, how something happened to everyone. It's just this complete chain reaction effect. Wow. Okay, you're gonna be a lot fresher on all these than me. And I'm like, you said Alex. I'm like, Alex. Who's Alex?
Who the fuck's Alex? I mean, by the end, she's kind of like, who the fuck is Alex? But but no.
I was just nodding and waiting for you to finish the sentence. So you'd be like, okay, context clues.
Yeah,
okay, great.
No. I know. I'm sorry. It's no. It's interesting, and one I thought that the character of Cece's mom, where she links up with her later in life, and there's this one bit where
I thought you were gonna say links up with, you know what I'm gonna say.
Oh yeah,
that was wild. Yeah,
wild, completely wild. But I loved the bit where she talks about seeing her mom's Facebook page, and she's like, this woman has made an absolute disaster of her whole life. None of her sisters speak to her. She's not in contact with either of her daughters, but on her Facebook page, she says she's showing not an iota of pain, shame, or self-consciousness. She looked beautiful and proud. And I thought it was sort of an interesting mediation on like the way that, you know, if we're being empathetic, that like women's sort of power comes from, like in the case of her mom, she does these despicable things, but in some ways you also get a sense that she sort of only feels like her only leverage is to be an object of lust for someone. And that's sort of like and it's kind of in the nature of Waldo's mom as well.
100%. Yeah, I think it's very easy to confuse sexuality with power.
Yeah.
You know, how could you not, with the messaging that we have all around us all the time? Yeah, I think it's a very easy thing to do. I'm glad you point out Waldo's mom. I think she can be. I'll talk about Have Age just for a moment, but you know, I'm in Waldo's point of view the entire book, and so I empathize with her so much, and I'm seeing the characters through her point of view. But it was important for me to step back and also empathize with the characters for themselves and try to get into that mindset and remember, okay, nobody thinks they're a bad guy. Write every character, you know, because every character believes their choices, believes that the choices they're making every day are the right ones. Everybody's trying their best and failing miserably, kind of operating off of that principle. So, you know, if I was feeling myself getting into a place of judgment, I would take a step back and try to experience, okay, what does it feel like to be Waldo's mom? You know, she was 16 when she had Waldo, and you know, really just vying for the affection of men who are completely incapable of giving it to her.
Exactly.
And just will continue to sort of pursue and chase relentlessly at the expense of her own sanity and dignity.
Totally. And doesn't have a way to think of her self-worth without that.
Oh, isn't it tragic?
It's really tragic.
How separated, if I can ask, how separated from your sexuality is your self-worth?
I mean, I'm single and I don't really date, so pretty separate.
Great. We're done here. Bye.
Well, no, but I think it's because I had really bad experiences and I was like, not putting that cat amongst the pigeons again for a while.
Good on you.
But I think also I'm one of 3 girls, and I don't know, I guess we were raised to not think of that being a particularly big part of our self-worth.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing to be raised that way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is interesting, really. And I don't really know where that came from, whether it's my mum or dad, but yeah, it is interesting.
What a gift.
I know, truly. I thought it was kind of interesting, you know, the like sort of long shadow of all these incidents and bad treatment. And it made me think, do you think like Waldo will be in therapy when she's in her 30s about the relationship with her teacher?
I'm so glad you asked this, because this is nobody's gone there, and it's partially why it was so important to me to keep the book contained to Waldo's point of view at her age, and not jump into, you know, 20 years down the line when she's inevitably going to have a different perspective about it than she has now. But because I don't think, as much as this is something so significant, you know, and we're seeing it kind of unfold in real time, I don't think this is going to be a tragedy that defines her. I think she's going to, you know, really, you know, I don't want to spoil the book, but in speaking to, you know, Waldo in the future, I think this is something that she will laugh about, that she will be able to look back on and laugh about, which is not making it more flippant or undermining it in any way, but it really, to me, reflects triumph on her part.
Yeah.
And that feels important, I think. Yeah, that just feels important.
It's important, and it's novel, and it's new, and like that's very much a different way of thinking about, you know, stuff that happens. We're used to kind of thinking of these things as like cause and effect, and I mean, if you're in therapy, you often spend a lot of time looking back and attributing causation to different things that happen later, and it's kind of radical to be able to hold it in that way.
Yeah. Useful, I think.
And then, you know, one thing that struck me about all of these books, and Half His Age as well, is there's a lot of affairs.
Oh,
right?
Are there? I'm trying to think. Okay, let's see. I didn't think you were going there.
No,
Great.
Well,
okay.
So, well, as in just because obviously, you know, Corgi's having an affair in like Half His Age, and then in Flesh it starts with an affair, obviously, with the wife, and then
which is where I thought the book was going. By the way, it goes in so many different so many different lanes than I expected.
Totally, I can't wait to talk about that one with you. And like Little Children, obviously the main affair, and then in everything.
Well, I've got a type.
Yeah, I know. I just thought that was interesting. Is there something about that dynamic that feels particularly compelling to you, do you think?
Wow. I mean, I really hadn't even recognized that, but maybe just that I think, you know, affairs are an area that's so easy to get kind of finger waggy about, and that as soon as the word affair is uttered, people are like, how dare, it just becomes really kind of self-righteous.
Yeah, and binary, and it's often not binary.
Yeah, and I think, oftentimes, to your point about cause and effect, I think there are reasons that things happen, and I love a book that goes into the deeper nooks and crannies, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's really interesting, and in many of these scenarios it does feel inevitable.
Agreed.
It sort of feels like these relationships were built on pretty shaky foundations, and why are we surprised while they're like rocking off balance?
Yeah, also, and I think on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, it's just entertaining. Yes. I think the suspense that's built in, it is entertaining.
I agree. That was one question I have for you as well, is why did you choose to set Half His Age in Alaska?
I've spent so much time in Alaska, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. I think aspects of it are so beautiful, and I really enjoy my time there, but I mean, it is ugly. Like, some areas of it are dank. It's like desolate. There's signs hanging off of gas stations. The streets are so wide. The mall, literally the Fifth Avenue Mall, which is in Half His Age, is all but closed. All the stores are just the gates pulled down, the clearance signs hanging still on the windows. And there's something about that I thought really underlined where Waldo's at emotionally, and sort of made it feel more like she doesn't have options. She doesn't have these choices. It limits her world in a way that I think, served her emotional arc.
Yeah, I completely agree. How can we spend so much time in Alaska?
My significant other's from there. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I've never been. I would like to go. It sort of feels
You don't need to.
You don't need to,
Go
really?
somewhere else. Go somewhere. If you want snow, like Park City, you know.
Interesting. But no, I love that, because I think, like, when you take a book like The Talented Mr. Ripley, the place is so important, right? Like, when you're reading those magical Italian, and I thought you invoked place really beautifully as well.
Thank you. Really well, and really in an ugly way.
but like you say, in a way that was actually really instructive to the development of the character, and explain it sort of helped to explain the psychological state in a way that it does with.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. But put Waldo in LA, and I think it's a different novel.
Exactly. I completely agree.
Different novel.
Yeah.
She's like driving through Burbank. She's picking up In and Out. Yeah. Okay. Nobody's struggling if they're picking up In and Out.
Yeah. So true. Well, next I thought we could talk about Flesh by David Szalay, which is I also read over the holidays. But tell me what you love about this book.
My favorite type of writing is when there are clean, simple sentences. Yes. I'm not a huge fan of big words writing. If I feel like I'm being written at, or like somebody's trying to show, I have this thing when somebody, I feel like they're trying to really show off with how they write. My instinct is to like touch them on the shoulder and say, "You're enough."
Well, but that's what kind of in Alice's book, right? She talks about when she's growing up and she's using all these long words and sentences, and she's like, "I was just performing."
Yes,
so I agree.
It's so felt. It's so felt. And Flesh is kind of the best of both worlds, where it's clearly so literary and just won the Booker Prize and is so hailed, understandably so, but also it's so accessible and anyone can pick up that book and appreciate it. And the storytelling is incredible. I respect his writing style and his storytelling so much.
Yeah. And he writes about sex in a really interesting way as well. And I mean, I
love
love
plain.
Yeah, it's very plain. Tell me about writing your sex scenes in Half His Age.
Well, I also tried to write the sex scenes in a really plain way. I think sex can look a lot of different ways. I think it can be really disgusting. It can be really sexy. Yeah. It can be really depressing.
Yes.
And I wanted to show all the shades, throughout the course of the book. What I didn't want to do are the two ways that I feel like I see it done a lot, which are that it's very romanticized and completely unrealistic, or that it's like performatively clumsy, where people are like knocking into lampshades. Yeah. Nobody's actually knocking into a lampshade in real life. Where it's like this quirky kind of vibe. Nobody wants cork in a bedroom. No. There are other places for cork.
Yeah.
Not the bedroom.
But you do get your scenes really get across the different emotional registers that can come with the physical sensation and the completely different mental state you can be in.
I hope so. I hope they're visceral. I hope elements of them are uncomfortable. Even the elements that are sexy, I hope are also uncomfortable. But I really wanted to write sex in an honest way, and actually did get some pushback from my editor where I felt him sort of, I don't know this was the case, but my read on it was that he had maybe wanted the sex scenes to be a little bit more of that flowery kind of poetic style, and that is just not. I wouldn't know how to do that. No. It's that would be for somebody else to write. But I wrote sex the way that I think of sex.
Yeah. Are there any authors that you look to for inspiration on how to write sex scenes, or just write from your gut? Yeah,
it's really just. I think it's just come from an intuitive place, and of course, this is through Waldo's point of view. So this is very much how she views sex, and she's 17. She turns 18 over the course of the book, and she's not a bells and whistles kind of girl. She's not a flowery kind of girl. And also, I think when I just talk about sex with my friends, nobody's, everybody's talking about it in a blunt, plain way.
There's no like flowery euphemisms. Yeah. It's just like
manhood.
Yeah.
He pressed his manhood into me. Yeah. Disgusting. Yeah. Get that manhood away.
Yeah, literally get it away.
Oh my God. The heat radiates. The heat's always radiating.
The heat is always radiating.
Oh my God. It's an oven in there.
Waiting for the touch or like, ugh.
Yes. The quiver.
Yes.
He trembled. They're always trembling.
Yeah.
There's a couple of these,
Totally. But in flesh, it's similarly blunt and direct and sort of like, I guess, not mechanical in a bad way, but just like honest.
Yes. Yeah. Almost clinical. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I thought like Ishvan was such an interesting character for a lead, as the like protagonist, because he's so passive. It feels like life happens to him.
Yes, I love that. I had never read a character with that kind of point of view or lack of point of view ever. Yeah. So interesting. And yet we're on board with him the entire time.
Exactly.
It's so amazing to be able to write a character that way and not have the reader feel above them, like completely empathizing every single move.
Yeah. The only part that I didn't love is towards the end when his son Jacob and wife die, because I just felt like I was really...
What a shock was that?
I know.
Did not see that coming.
I didn't see it coming, and I think I felt like I was really immersed in a real world, and then when that happened at the sort of like 75% mark, I was like, I'm in a novel. Which I don't know, is probably unfair, but how did you feel when you got to that part where you just like...
I mean, I was tearing through that book. Like I never once slowed down. I thought, every move was surprising. I couldn't predict where it was going next. It almost read like sort of short stories.
Exactly.
Different,
like vignettes.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Different phases of his life. But then woven together so beautifully. I don't know. Yeah. I can't imagine what his what his process was for structuring it.
I know. And I thought really sort of these...
We have the same agent. I can ask my
do
agent.
You?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's interesting. Yeah. Do you like talk to when you've got the same agent, does that like help writers bond?
Okay. My agent is literally the coolest agent I can imagine. He is an artist himself, which seems like, okay, should they really be an agent? Yes. Somehow this man was just blessed to be gifted in both artistically and as an agent. I don't know how he does it, but he's written an incredible memoir called Portrait of an Addict as a Young Man.
Oh, wow.
Which is, it's riveting. I highly recommend it. Yeah. You feel like you are an addict the entire time.
I also like it when you can feel that agents have a particular taste or like a unifying theme.
That an agent has taste, period?
Yeah, well, that too.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
what a blessing. I feel that way
know.
about him and my agents in Hollywood, where I don't know how I lucked out with a team that is cool, kind, genuine, and has taste.
Oh,
like,
that is special.
What a rarity.
How long have you been with them for?
Bill's fairly new.
Yeah.
Bill's fairly new. I literally screamed the day that I signed with him. He represents all of my favorites.
Yeah.
And my other agents I've been with for a couple years now at this point. Yeah, several years.
Your memoir was obviously such a bestseller and an incredible book. I couldn't put it. We actually had Sharon Horgan on One Nightstand.
I love Sharon.
And your memoir was one of her books that she selected.
Sharon.
And she talked a little bit about adapting and...
She's so sweet.
How's that going working on the adaptation?
I can't say too much. It's still so early.
Yeah.
I can't say too much, but I do have I can say a really clear vision for it. I know exactly what it is, and it's really just a matter, I think, of making sure everybody on the team really understands that vision, because it's very specific.
Totally. And Jennifer Aniston.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. Have you worked with her much yet so far? Or is it sort of...
I can't say too much. Okay. I wish I could say more. No, I can't say too much. Yeah.
Well, I'm dying to hear more about it. And we were talking, and I don't answer this if you can, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. But are you going to cast like a child, or is that too...
I can't answer.
You can't answer.
I can't answer.
Okay.
I plead the fifth.
It was worth a try.
Half his age, I can answer anything.
Okay. When Sharon was talking about, she spoke about watching you on iCarly when her kids were younger, and how that was how she like sort of fell in love with how like dry and deadpan you are. So it was very, very sweet. I noticed that like Flesh, when I was researching it, people have a lot of feelings about it on TikTok and social media, and like,
I mean, people got a lot of feelings about everything on TikTok and social media.
Truly,
people got too many feelings.
I know,
on these platforms.
But I think often when a book receives praise, like the booker, people who didn't respond to it have a sort of like, wait, what? But how do you feel about feedback or reviews? Is that something you care about?
No, I've never cared about a couple of things, which is like reviews or numbers. I never, I try to really stay away as much as possible. But people will send me nice things, and that's great. I'll get my friends will be like, oh my God, like New York Times just wrote something and all my friends were freaking out about it.
Review. Yeah, it's great.
So that's always, it's great. It definitely adds a little nice touch to my day when I see something like that. But generally I try my best to define success by me liking the thing that I've done. When I like it, I know, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I can control.
When you were writing Half His Age, did you have a specific reader in mind?
Myself.
Really?
Me. Yeah, truly.
Good for you.
I genuinely write for myself. I think if I were to try to write something that pleased that's not, I wouldn't know how to write from that place.
Yeah.
It's such a personal act. And I do think that's the way to connect with people. Truly. I think if you're trying to, cater it to what they'll like, that's a sure way to miss the mark.
Yeah, you kind of just have to show up completely as yourself, because that is where the superpower is.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Do you see yourself?
And what's the point of doing it otherwise? I wouldn't understand.
This is why I want your children's book. I feel like it would be great.
I thought you were saying this is when I want your children. I was like, wait, what? Okay.
But I feel like your perspective in a children's book would be so good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I think it is so singular and distinct and different and like unafraid in a way that like...
That's so nice.
Yeah. I think it would be brilliant. And then, do you see yourself adapting Half His Age?
Yes, I'm already done with the screenplay. I literally went straight from finishing the novel this year, in the middle of this year, like around October of this year is when I think I finished. Yeah. And then I went straight into the adaptation, and I've got a solid draft of it that I love. Of course, it'll be, much more work down the line, and I'm attached to direct it, which I'm very excited about.
That is exciting.
Yeah, I'm thrilled.
Any dream castings?
Ooh, dream castings. I don't know. I've actually already met with a few actresses who are incredible, and I'd be, so lucky to work with any of them. Yeah. But so I can't.
No, I get it. Yeah.
I guess this is the one area of Half His Age that I can't speak to.
Yeah, that's that would be so exciting though. And do you think you would film it in Alaska?
Yeah, I would love to. And I think it's so important. I've been speaking with just several of my author friends who want to adapt their own work, and I think it's so key. I'm so grateful that I've gotten to do this for Half His Age, where you're the person who birthed the thing. It only makes sense that you're the person who carries it to its next phase, if you want to do that. If you just want to say, okay, whatever, I don't want to be involved, that's whatever. But I do think the project's going to really benefit from the author still authoring it.
Totally. I'm dying to see an adaptation of Flesh.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Because I think the setting, and like, I love the relationship between him and his mom.
Yeah.
The way that she's sort of like, I love that when she finally comes over to meet the family in London, and she's like, Thomas, that's his wife Helen's son from her first marriage, the one that he used to
lost me at Thomas
before.
again. Alex, Thomas, don't know who any of these people are.
The like stepson that ends up hating
Okay,
him.
great.
She's like, he does not like you, and she's like, you need to think about that. And I was just like, that is like, I don't know. I thought it was very sweet.
Yeah, the relationship with the wife is so good too. You'll know her name.
So Helen.
Okay,
I write them down here because I always like.
Good on you.
I get memory blankness sometimes when I'm doing these, where like I've read the book 2 days ago and then I just completely cannot remember.
Or do you ever feel like that's like boy speak? Like I feel like boys remember quotes from movies, and that's like their love language. It's like, get two men together in the same room talking about Pulp Fiction, and they're there for the whole day, right? But with women, I don't know. I'm not like. I don't remember quotes from movies. I remember sort of how it made me feel, what it made me think about.
I get that. I was actually listening to when Felicity Jones came on, she picked some Virginia Woolf, and I love Virginia Woolf, and I read it a lot when I was at university. But I used to wrestle with it when I was like 19 because I was like, I need to follow the exact plot. And then I was listening to this top professor on Virginia Woolf. She's like, no idea what's happening. It's all about the vibes. And I was like, oh my God, you mean I spent the whole time worrying about the details when sometimes you just gotta let it flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not a very let it flow person, but there we go.
Are you not?
Unfortunately, no, I'm too rigid and uptight for that, but what can you do? we try, we keep it moving. But no, I love Flesh, and I think it's a brilliant, and I love that you have the same agent. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the talented Mr. Ripley.
Okay, I'm honestly still thinking about you saying that you don't typically like let it go with the flow. I'm wondering if there's an area where you do. Is there like any spot of your life where it's?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's
love that.
It's hard. I think like I actually have a you know that Taylor Swift lyric, I've never been a natural, all I do is try. It's in one of her songs.
I don't, but that's great.
Exactly. And I have that on my wall in like this little cross stitch thing because I relate to that immensely. Just like paddling under the water all the time.
Ugh.
Yeah. Anyway. Talking of another paddler, Mr. Tom Ripley. Tell me about your love of this book.
I love Patricia Highsmith, specifically Talented Mr. Ripley and The Price of Salt.
Oh, I haven't read The Price of Salt. I need to
Adapted
read
to Carol. Have you seen Carol?
Yeah.
Both great movies too.
Incredible.
Amazing. I mean, talk about, that's 2 for 2 there. But it's just a book that's really entertaining. Mm-hmm. I love getting in the mindset of somebody who's so naive, but also so creepy and unsettling. You know, some people talk about it as really like empathizing with him. I don't necessarily feel that when I'm reading it. Okay, you feel the same way?
Literally, no. I have got here. I was reading a New York Times for the anniversary. It talked about empathy for Tom. I wasn't. Did you? Literally.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Same page, right? Yeah. But I appreciate that because it's a very fly on the wall. Yes. There's this fly on the wall element to it where I feel like I'm just like peeping on something that's so wrong, so inappropriate, so like what a weirdo.
Yeah.
But I do find, you know, it's just a riveting story ultimately.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I love that, you know, the easy trope for someone who's kind of like as vicious as Tom can be at points would be to make it really like he's this dark premeditated, and actually he's kind of whimsical. He's like, oh yeah, I suppose I'm just gonna have to murder him now.
Yeah
like it
just whoops, I killed him.
Yeah, literally.
Yes.
But it makes it so much lighter and more entertaining.
He's like, what am I gonna do with the body? I can't really drag it past that thing because they'll see. It's like, yeah, Tom, they're gonna see.
They're gonna see the dead fucking body. I know, it's so fun though. Have you watched? You're a fan of the like Gwyneth Paltrow Jude Law adaptation?
Yes, but I didn't see the other, which I know. So it's a series
on Netflix.
But the book is a series, which I didn't. I honestly hadn't realized until then I saw the series and was like, wait, what's the deal? How come it's a series when it was a movie? Whatever. But was that good? Did you enjoy that?
I haven't. I watched the series a bit, but I prefer the original sort of movie.
It's so good. The character of Marge changed so much in the best way. I think I think Gwyneth Paltrow nailed it.
But. Oh, she really did, because it is quite different. Because in the book, she's quite Midwestern almost.
Yes, I would have loved to see that version as well. I would really like to see that, but I do think it made so much sense for Dickie to be with somebody who sort of feels like his equal in a lot of ways while still kind of, you know, saying degrading things and not respecting her.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do you ever see yourself writing like anything? Because obviously this is I mean, actually in McNally Jackson, when I went to pick it up, it was in the mystery section. Do you ever see yourself writing a piece of more like genre-ish fiction?
I don't know. I could, maybe a mystery. There's like, I'm working on something now, and there are genre elements.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I think I can imagine it being quite fun when you've done like to experiment with different forms, because actually I've been reading this like craft book, and it is quite interesting when you start to break down the constituent elements and see how the machine comes together in a way. Did you read any craft books when you were writing Half His Age?
No,
you just kind of that's amazing, because the construction is so like.
Thank you. Yeah, all through drafting, very much. I mean, it went through so many different iterations, and specifically the first 50 pages changed so much. Those were by far the most difficult, where I just kept moving. I write in little vignettes, and I kept moving the vignettes around, and of course on a line level, I always joke that every line changed except for one, which was the last of the stragglers filed out, just like the most innocuous, plain line. Everything else changed completely. But those first 50 pages were really difficult to track, because it's actually, Half His Age is a simple story. And so it seems like maybe it would be sort of simple to structure, but it had to be so meticulously structured, because with a simple story, that means the emotional arcs have to be pitch perfect and have to track so well, so in such a believable and grounded way.
Yeah.
So there was so much moving and shifting and changing and reshaping in order to get each emotional beat to lay appropriately and to track with all of the subsequent ones.
I was so scared when Mulder went into his house when he wasn't there.
Oh my God.
I was like, it felt tense.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting to sort of like lean into that area for a moment.
Yeah, I think, speaking to Half His Age, there were, I think, just little moments of thriller in it, Yeah, and I wanted to have just a teaspoon of thriller.
No, there was. I mean, that bit, and I thought it was so interesting. One other thing that I was struck by is that obviously when we first see Waldo and Corgi kind of getting to know each other, they are in the school, and then once the affair begins, we don't, I think, see them in the school together again. We sort of then see their relationship more outside. Tell me about that decision and why you didn't want to like take it back into the school once they were sort of together.
Yeah, I felt the school, keeping it so hyper contained to the school, could be limiting, and I wanted to see their relationship breathe, and also see how it breathing impacts the two of them and how it informs decisions they make and how they interact with one another. I also think, we're so used to seeing people in certain contexts, and I wanted to see how the relationship would react to being in other contexts.
Totally. I also think it made the sort of moral strokes of it feel even more blurred, because if you were seeing them constantly at school, you'd be reminded that this was like such an abuse of power on his part. But when you see them like having a nice day at like by the beach or whatever, or like going out for one of their meals, it's sort of it makes everything in the way that like Patricia Highsmith does with, like, I didn't have empathy for Tom, but you sort of like you sort of, everything does become a bit more blurred.
Yes, I wanted, I'm so glad you bring this up, because I really wanted the lines to be blurred in that way and stretch it as far as I could, knowing that we all know the cold hard facts of this situation. How far can we follow this relationship down different avenues? Is there a point where we forget the cold hard facts?
Yeah.
What is that point?
Exactly. And I could feel that, and that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, is that I feel like the book does such a, there are these sort of like unfulfilled women's, and they, with the different mother figures and the wounds that they inflict, and then also the men. But
first of all, like, unfulfilled women, that's the genre. That's the genre I care. If a woman's staring out of a window in a film sadly, if Jessica Chastain's looking out a window sadly, I am in. If Cate Blanchett fiddling an earring, done.
Literally. But it's like the wounds that these women inflict, often for reasons that aren't necessarily their fault, but it really makes the line between victim and villain, I think that you're a master at that, feel so blurry.
Thank you. Yeah, I do try to avoid sort of, I definitely try to avoid moralistic writing, anything finger waggy. I don't think that has any chance of resonating. And sort of being stuck in those victim villain narratives. I do try to write each character as believing that they're making the right choice.
Yeah.
We may know otherwise, but I think it's important to write the character as believing what they're doing.
Yeah. The first page of Half His Age obviously has a very like graphic sex scene. Talk to me. Was it when you said you were rearranging the vignettes? Was that always the first one?
There were a few. It was initially the first one, and then I moved it around a few times, and it just became clear that it had to be the opening. I really fixate on sort of opening lines in books and then opening images in film. I think they say, when done right, they say so much about the themes and what's to come, and they really lay the groundwork. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to start on Waldo being in the most vulnerable position she can be in. And then also reflecting or showing the difference between physical intimacy and genuine intimacy, because here she is being, physically intimate with a guy, and yet there's an entirely different thread that she's pulling on mentally. It's completely different. Couldn't be more separate. Yeah. And I think that's something so common for us women. I think, we'll be doing one thing physically and our minds will be completely elsewhere.
Literally. And then, so your final book is Little Children by Tom Perrotta. Tell me about your love of that book.
Well, first I'll tell you about my love of Tom Perrotta. He is a genius and somebody who's inspired me so much over the years. I've read, I think, his entire body of work, much of it multiple times. He is just so striking. His character work is, I think, pretty unprecedented. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of conversation around like who should be allowed to write what kinds of characters. And all I know is that I have never felt more seen as a woman than I have reading something that Tom's written. And I feel that way about Sarah, one of the main characters in Little Children. She's just this ordinary woman, with a little kid, and she's spending days by the pool and doing all the things that like an ordinary mother should be doing. But she's got an entirely different line of thinking, and being with her and sitting in her interiority is unbelievably relatable. I can't imagine any woman sort of reading that and not saying, oh my God, I'm Sarah, I'm Sarah, exactly. I'm Sarah. It's just done so well.
Yeah. And it sort of captures that like playground, like tyrannical, almost like boredom of motherhood, the way that you can feel that it's like creeping up, like
ticking. It's ticking. It's a ticking time bomb for sure.
It really is. And I think the book does such a good job, like yours, at it feels like very claustrophobic, these communities, and the way that they can feel very trapping, but also like home. I don't know, it's a very complex dynamic.
He writes suburban ennui better than anybody, I think. 100%. And just, the experience of being a human being, the way that his characters talk. I love when somebody can write dialogue in the way that we hear people talk all the time. And it's so annoying. Just like, I think it opens up and they're like, what's that Jim Carrey movie? The one with and they're like trying to remember the Jim Carrey movie. Yeah. And she's like, it's fucking me, myself, and Irene. It's me, why does nobody know the names of movies? Like, why are we all struggling to find the names of movies? Yeah. What is the deal?
And the bit where they're all like, oh yeah, it's cute. And she's like, if I hear one more person call it cute. Yeah. I was like, oh, it's just, but it also kind of captures the way that like such a small thing can be the thing that pushes you over the edge in a given moment.
Yes.
It's fascinating. I wondered how because I felt really like claustrophobically sort of stuck in the place, and from your memoir you write so brilliantly about LA and how that felt at different points, and I wondered how you feel about living in LA now as an adult, and whether your feelings about the city have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, I live in an area that doesn't feel like LA. Yeah. So I don't have to
participate,
be in that. I wouldn't want to be in that.
No.
Yeah.
No, I know. I watched I Love LA, the HBO show. And it's sort of like, it doesn't make me want to live in LA.
I've yet to see it, but I'm sure I agree. Yeah.
And then with your future writing, you say you're working on something at the moment. Mm-hmm. Is that a novel or a screenplay, or you don't want to say?
I can't say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I selfishly...
I'll say it's a book.
Okay, it's a book. Interesting. And would you ever write a sequel of something like Half His Age?
Never say never. I was thinking, for some reason it crossed my mind the other day, of like, what would a book in Franny's point of view look like?
Oh my God, that is exactly what I was about to say.
Really?
Because, Franny's going to wake up at 35 and be miserable in that marriage with that guy.
With 5 kids,
Literally.
Whose names all start with G or something? Yeah.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was thinking, because it is that marriage, and you can already see the path that she's going to become one of those unfulfilled women.
Oh, you already see it.
You see it.
Knitting on Saturdays and hoping for the best.
Exactly. Well,
no offense to knitting. I don't have anything against knitting.
We're not shading knitting. Well, thank you so much, Jennette. This was brilliant, and I loved Half His Age. It's such an exquisite book. I can't wait for everyone to read it. And thank you for these great recommendations too.
This was so fun chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.